You know what your boundaries are. You've read the books, you've done the therapy, you've written them down in your journal. But when it's time to actually enforce one, when you're standing in front of someone about to say no, your body panics, your mind goes blank, and you fold. Here's why, and it's not what you think. I'm Patty Ferreira, and if you're a high-achieving woman who knows what her boundaries are but can't seem to enforce them, this one's for you. Because the problem isn't that you don't know what your boundaries are. The problem is what happens in your nervous system when you try to enforce them. And once you understand that, everything changes. Let me start by saying this. You don't need another list of boundary examples. You don't need me to tell you what healthy boundaries look like. You already know these things. You know you shouldn't answer work emails at 11 p.m., for example. You know you shouldn't take on another project when you're already drowning. You also know you shouldn't say yes to plans you don't want to make. You know this. So the question isn't, what are my boundaries? The question is, why can't I enforce them? And that's what most people get wrong. They think the problem is clarity. Like if they just define their boundaries more clearly, they'll be able to hold them. But that's not it. The problem isn't knowing what your boundaries are. The problem is what happens in your body when you try to enforce them. Here's what no one tells you. Setting a boundary and enforcing a boundary are two completely different nervous system experiences. Let me explain. Setting a boundary is an intellectual exercise. You're setting in your journal, you're safe, you're alone, no one is watching you, and you write, I will not answer work emails after 11 p.m., for example. Done. Boundary set. It feels good. It feels empowering. You think, I've got this. But then your boss texts you at 9 p.m. with a quick question. And now you're not in your journal anymore. Now you're standing in your kitchen, looking at your phone, and your nervous system is doing something completely different. Your chest tightens, your heart starts to race, your mind spirals. What if they think I'm not committed? What if this affects my performance review? What if they're upset with me? And in that moment, when your body is flooded with that level of panic, the boundary you set in your journal doesn't matter, because enforcing a boundary isn't an intellectual exercise. It's a nervous system experience, and your body is treating it like a threat. Here's the analogy that helped me understand this. Setting a boundary is like knowing how to swim. You've taken the lessons, you know the strokes, and you can do it in the pool. But enforcing a boundary, that's like jumping into the ocean during a snowstorm. Knowing how to swim doesn't help when the waves are crashing, it's freezing cold, and your body is in survival mode. That's the difference. And that's why you can know what your boundaries are and still be able to enforce them. Because when the moment comes, when you're standing in front of someone, watching their face change, feeling their disappointment, your nervous system hijacks the decision. And you say yes. Not because you chose to, but because your body couldn't tolerate the alternative. So let's talk about what's actually happening in your body. When you think about enforcing a boundary, your nervous system scans for threat. And here's what it finds. First, it finds disappointing someone, possible rejection. Rejection, survival threat. That isn't logic. This is how your nervous system was wired, probably a long time ago. Maybe you grew up in a home where disappointing your parents meant withdrawal of love. Maybe you had a relationship where setting boundaries led to abandonment. Maybe you had a job where pushing back got you punished. Whatever it was, your nervous system learned enforcing boundaries equals danger. And so now every time you try to enforce one, your body sounds the alarms. It goes danger, threat, do not proceed. It's like having a smoke alarm that goes off every time you're just like toasting bread. The alarm isn't broken. It's just wildly miscalibrated. And that's what's happening in your body. Your nervous system is treating a normal, healthy boundary like a life-threatening event. So what happens when you can't enforce your boundaries? Let me tell you what this is costing you. First, you lose yourself, your self-identity. When you constantly override your own needs to keep the peace, you stop knowing what you actually want. Someone will ask you something simple about a preference or what you want to eat, and you freeze because you've trained yourself to scan everyone else and to adjust and to comply to what they want. And over time, you forget that you have preferences. Second, you build resentment. You say yes when you really mean no. You shut up when you don't want to. You give and you give. And then you're angry, frustrated, and exhausted. Not at them, but at yourself. Because you knew you didn't want to do it in the first place, but you did it anyway. Thirdly, you become a magnet for people who take and take and take. When you have no boundaries, you attract people who will exploit you and take advantage of you. They ask and ask and ask because they know you'll say yes. And the more you give, the more they expect. Until you're surrounded by people who don't value you. They value what you do for them. Also, you can't build real intimacy. Real connection requires honesty, and honesty requires boundaries. But if you're always performing, always adjusting to keep the peace, no one ever knows the real you. And that's real lonely. You sacrifice your success. High-achieving women think boundaries will hurt their careers. But the opposite is true. When you can't enforce boundaries, you're overcommitted, spread too thin, saying yes to opportunities that don't deserve you. And you miss the right opportunities because you're too busy with the wrong ones. Lastly, you can't scale. You can't lead. Because enforcing boundaries is a requirement of sustainable success. Now, here's why all the generic advice doesn't work. Everyone tells you just enforce your boundaries. Say no. But that's like telling someone with a phobia of heights to just stand on the edge of the cliff. The problem isn't what they should do. The problem is their body's response to doing it. You can't just enforce the boundary when your nervous system is in panic mode. Because in that moment, your body is convinced you're about to die. And all the scripts you've memorized, all the how to say no tips, they don't matter because you're not operating from your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that makes rational decisions. You're operating from your amygdala, the part of your brain that's screaming, danger, fix that now. And until you learn to regulate your nervous system in that moment, you'll keep folding. No matter how much you know, you shouldn't. So how do you actually enforce your boundaries? Here's the real answer, and it's not what most people teach. You don't enforce boundaries by trying harder to say no. You enforce boundaries by learning to tolerate the discomfort that comes from saying no. That's the whole game. Let me say it again. The key isn't better boundary setting skills. It's discomfort tolerance. You have to be willing to feel the discomfort of disappointing someone, to sit with the tension of their reaction, to let them be upset and not want to fix it. That's the work. And here's how you start. Step 1, stop rehearsing the boundary and start rehearsing the discomfort. Most people practice what they're going to say. I'm going to say I can't take that on right now, or I'm going to say no, I'm good. That's not what you need to practice. You need to practice sitting with the feeling that comes after you say it. The silence, the tension, the disappointment on their face. That's what your nervous system can't tolerate. So practice that. Sit with discomfort for 30 seconds, for 1 minute, and then for 5 minutes. Let your body see this discomfort and know that you're still safe. Step 2, expect their reaction. Don't try to prevent it. When you enforce a boundary, people will react. They'll be disappointed, they'll push back, they'll be upset even. That's normal. Your job isn't to prevent their reaction. Your job is to tolerate yours. Let them be disappointed and let them adjust. Your boundary isn't negotiable just because they don't like it. Step 3, tolerate the silence after you say it. Here's where most people fold. They say the boundary and then silence. And in that silence, panic floods in. So they start backtracking, explaining, softening. I could probably make it work. If I really needed to, I can do it. Stop and just tolerate the silence. Let it sit. Let them process. Let the discomfort exist without rushing to fix it. Step 4, let them be upset without explaining yourself. When you enforce a boundary, you don't owe anyone an explanation. No one needs it. No is a complete sentence, but most people, they can't tolerate that, so they over-explain. I can't because I have this thing, and also my schedule's crazy, and I'm really sorry, but if I could, I would. Just stop. You're not negotiating, you're not asking permission, you're stating a boundary. Let them be upset. You don't have to fix it. Step 5, prove to your nervous system you survived and nothing bad happened. This is the most important step. After you enforce a boundary, your nervous system needs proof that you're safe. So notice, you said no and you're still here and nothing catastrophic happened. They were disappointed, but you survived their disappointment. They pushed back and you held your ground. And the world didn't end. That's the proof, the soul inventory your nervous system needs. And over time, the alarm stops screaming every time you enforce a boundary, because your body learns this isn't actually dangerous. So here's the shift I want you to make. Stop thinking, I need to get better at enforcing boundaries, and start thinking, I need to build my capacity to tolerate discomfort, because that's the real skill. That's the inner work. Not the words you say, not the script you use, but your ability to sit with someone's disappointment without abandoning yourself. And here's what happens when you build that capacity. You stop abandoning yourself. You know what you want, you know what you need, and you honor that even when it's uncomfortable. You attract different people. People who respect boundaries don't disappear when you set them. The ones who do, they were only there because you had no boundaries. You build real intimacy because real connection comes from being known, not from being compliant. And when you stop performing, people can finally see the real you. You become a better leader. Leadership requires boundaries. It requires the ability to disappoint people. And when you can enforce boundaries, you step into that power. You protect your energy. And you stop giving to people who take. You stop overcommitting. You stop overfunctioning. And you start showing up in ways that actually serve you. Now, this is the first video in a series I'm doing on boundaries, because boundaries aren't one conversation. They're a skill set. And over the next few weeks, I'm going to break this down skill set by skill set. Why you feel guilty when you set boundaries and what to do about it. Why just say no doesn't work and what actually does. how to handle people who don't respect your boundaries. So if this video helped, subscribe to my channel because there's more coming on this topic. And if you want to go even deeper, if you're ready to actually practice this work with support in community, I want to invite you into Awakened and Rising. It's a circle of high-achieving women who are done abandoning themselves. We practice enforcing boundaries together. We hold each other accountable. We do the nervous system work as a community. We have weekly live coaching calls where I walk you through the exact moments you get stuck in. And this is a private group where you can share what's real, the hard stuff, the messy stuff, and you can share that you just folded again and that you're furious at yourself. Real support, real accountability, real women who want to slip back into their power and leave these patterns behind. It's a $30 a month membership. The link is going to be in the bio. And if you're not ready for it yet, just watch the rest of this series. Start practicing. Sit with the discomfort. If this landed for you, hit subscribe. I post new videos every Thursday on these topics like boundaries and taking your power back. And if you know another woman who knows what her boundaries are but can't seem to enforce them, send this to her. Because when one woman stops abandoning herself, she gives other women permission to do the same. I'll see you next week for part 2. And that's going to be why you feel guilty when you're setting boundaries.